June 1944, the port city of Cherbourg was dying and being born at the same time. The thunder of artillery echoed through its streets, and smoke hung low over the rooftops where once fishermen had called to one another in the mornings. For 3 weeks, the battle for Normandy had raged inland from the beaches, and now the fight had reached the sea again. Cherbourg, once proud and bustling, was nothing but stone and fire. The Germans had declared it a fortress city, a Festung. That meant no surrender, no retreat, and no mercy. Hitler's orders were clear: the port must hold at all costs. Every building was fortified, every street wired with explosives, every tunnel converted into a firing position. And yet, the Allied armies pressed closer each day. The men of the US VII Corps under General Collins advanced yard by yard through the fields of Normandy toward the city that would become their prize and their graveyard. By June 20th, the outer ring of defenses had fallen. American artillery thundered from the surrounding hills. The last German units retreated into the city itself, transforming Cherbourg's narrow streets into killing zones. Snipers waited behind shattered windows, machine guns barked from cellars, and every corner seemed to hold another ambush. The air stank of cordite and seawater. It was war at its most intimate, street to street, door to door, room to room. Among the chaos, a photograph was taken, one of the most haunting of the Normandy campaign. It shows a fallen German soldier lying in front of a café. His helmet lies beside him, his fingers still clutching a grenade. Above him hangs a sign that reads Luftschutzraum, air raid shelter. The irony could not be sharper. The shelter that promised safety had become a tomb. The window behind him is shattered, the shutters warped by fire. Debris covers the cobblestones. No one knows the name of the man who died there. He could have been 20, maybe younger. He might have come from Berlin, Munich, or Vienna. He might have been a conscript or a loyal believer. In death, none of it matters. He lies as the battle ends around him, the city collapsing into silence. The photographer didn't stage the image or frame it with artistry. He simply recorded a moment when war showed its true face. Stillness after chaos. The American soldiers who passed by that day had no time for reflection. Their uniforms were torn and blackened, their eyes hollow from days without sleep. They had fought through hedgerows, through minefields, through ambushes that came from every direction. Many of them were barely older than the man lying in that doorway. They stepped past him, weapons at the ready, expecting another sniper to fire from the next window. In Cherbourg, there was no such thing as safe ground. By June 24th, the battle was nearly over. The German commander, General Karl von Schlieben, had gathered what was left of his forces in the fortress on the city's edge. American artillery and naval guns pounded the defenses day and night. The sky glowed orange as fuel depots burned. The streets were filled with the wreckage of tanks and trucks, their twisted metal gleaming like bones in the sunlight. Then, on June 26th, after days of bombardment, the white flags began to appear. The garrison surrendered. 30,000 prisoners marched out of the ruins, thin, filthy, and silent. Many were just boys. For the Americans, it was a victory, but a strange one. The port they had fought so hard to capture was destroyed. The docks were mined, cranes toppled, ships sunk in the harbor to block entry. It would take months before Cherbourg could be used again. But the battle's cost was written in every broken wall and every body lying unburied on its streets. The fallen soldier outside the café became a symbol of that cost. His photograph, reprinted in papers and archives, was not used for propaganda. It was too quiet for that. It didn't shout victory or vengeance. It whispered. It showed what war really left behind once the shooting stopped. The café behind him had been a gathering place before the war. Locals said it had served fishermen and sailors for generations. During the occupation, it became a German billet. Now it was a ruin. The street itself, Rue de Port, was one of the main arteries leading to the harbor. When the photograph was taken, rubble filled its gutters, and black smoke rose where a shell had hit the fuel tanks near the docks. The sign above the doorway, the air raid shelter, was written in German, but its message was universal. In war, there is no safe place. Imagine the moment that photograph captured. The camera clicks and the world stands still. The smell of gunpowder lingers. Somewhere in the distance, an explosion rolls across the harbour. A seagull circles overhead, startled by the noise. The photographer lowers his camera. The soldier on the ground will never move again. But through that lens, his last moment becomes eternal. When the war ended, Cherbourg began to heal. The rubble was cleared, buildings rebuilt, docks dredged. By the early 1950s, ships once again filled the harbour, their whistles echoing against new warehouses and cranes. The café was repaired. Its walls were repainted white. Tourists returned, unaware that beneath the fresh plaster were stones that had witnessed a war's ending. Decades later, historians identified the location from the photograph. They compared the shapes of windows and doors, the angle of the street, the pattern of the cobblestones. The building still stood. The sign was gone, but the frame was unmistakable. The same window, the same doorway, the same slope of the street toward the harbour. Today, that spot is peaceful, a quiet corner where the only sounds are footsteps and the distant cry of gulls. People walk past, some knowing, most not. A few stop to compare old photos to the present, realizing that they're standing where history once paused. The café serves espresso and pastries now. Children ride bicycles past the doorway. Yet if you look closely, you can still see traces. Faint scars in the stone where bullets struck, tiny chips in the masonry that paint never quite hid. The air feels no different, but it carries something unseen. Memory. That photograph of the German soldier lying where he fell is not just about death, it's about time. It bridges the world that was with the world that is. It reminds us that the liberation of France, celebrated with flags and headlines, was built on moments like this. Quiet, tragic, human. Every street won came at a price. Every city freed was first destroyed. The man in the photograph never knew that his final position would be studied for decades. He never knew that people would stand in that same doorway generations later, wondering who he was. He never knew that his stillness would outlast every speech, every victory parade, every monument. But history is strange like that. It remembers not through glory, but through the things that refuse to disappear. If you stand there today, in that peaceful French street, the sunlight will hit the same wall that once caught the shadow of a dying man. The cobblestones will shine the same way after rain. The world will look ordinary, but somewhere beneath the noise of the present, if you listen carefully, you can almost hear it. The distant echo of boots on stone, the rumble of tanks at the edge of town, and the silence that followed when the battle for Cherbourg finally ended. The café stands, alive again. The war is long gone, but the photograph endures, a reminder that history's greatest stories are not written in glory, but in the quiet places where men fell and time stood still.